Welcome to the FARcast. This is Alex Helmbrecht. I'm joined here today with Daniel Binkard. And today we have a guest who really needs no introduction for those who are familiar with Chadron State College, whether that's on the athletic side or just on the general campus news side. We are honored to have Con Marshall today, an individual who has worked with Daniel and myself in several different capacities. I even shared an office with him for some time in the old Klein Center days. So, Con, thank you for joining us today. The first question for you: how long have you been at CSC, and what have your roles been?
Well, my first day of work was July 1st, 1969. I had gone to college here before that, but I had never ever worked for the college prior to that, and grew up in Chadron and grew up paying attention to what had happened at Chadron State College to a degree at least. And what have my duties been? Well, they've been assorted. For sure. One of my things that I came here for, I think, was my understanding was, and I never submitted an application, I just got hired, but was probably to do sports information and give a little more attention to the athletic teams and they had been receiving, perhaps. And it was a good time because things got better pretty soon. The 60s was not a great year for some athletics at Chadron State, although basketball thrived at that time, and new sports were coming. Just starting to have volleyball and women's sports and coming into view, and so that was fun. And then, but my duties included, in my estimation, it was anything that made Chadron State look significant or looked like they'd done it. Looked like Chadron State had done something well, or the students or the faculty at Chadron State had done something well.
What did you study in college? Were you a journalism major, an English major?
Well, kind of business major. Took economics courses, which I enjoyed a lot, and then I went to English also, and I was on the Eagle staff, the student newspaper staff, for all 3 semesters that happened in those days. I think I was probably the editor one year, and maybe more than that, I'm not sure. But anyway, I was interested in journalism in those days, and so that's what I studied, and took accounting and business communications and things like that.
Great, thanks.
So in the later years of your job here, how did things change? Where are you at right now?
Well, things were changing things changed a lot, of course. And it doesn't happen in one day. It's a gradual change, and I was more gradual than the changes were, and I was always lagging behind on keeping up with the changes, and I still am, and I'm not proud of that at all. I wished I'd have got on the bandwagon and worked a little harder to learn things technically and things, but anyway, I had plenty to do and plenty of things to, and tried to keep up with the developments on campus.
Sure.
But I was not one of the instigators or the first people to get involved in computers or things of that sort, or new technology. That was people like Roger West and a whole bunch more. He was probably one of the primary leaders of that. But anyway, I struggled along, and thanks to people like you two, but people preceding you in your jobs helped keep me going too, a little bit.
Yeah.
I was always dragging behind.
Con, what are some of the things that stand out to you about your career? Are there a few things that kind of, I guess, get to the top of your mind when you talk about it, when you look back at your career?
Well, I think my idea of what I was trying to do all the time and still try to do is tell about good things that are happening at Chadron State College. And I wrote lots and lots of stories about faculty members making presentations at conferences, students doing the same thing, students going to programs that and excelling in maybe business or home economics, or for a while, I had a kind of a standing appointment every Monday morning over in the Memorial Hall, because I took pictures of the forensics people that had come back from contests and done very well in speech contests of various sorts. That seemed to be a hot item in those times. Chadron State had some very gifted students in that, and every Monday morning I'd come and take pictures of their trophies and their plaques and their ribbons and stuff that they had won and stuff. And about that, I did about the same thing for quite a while with rodeo, because we had some outstanding rodeo people, and some of them were national champions and regional champions and things like that. And I'd take a picture of them every Monday morning with their new set of trophies that they'd won at Iowa State. University of Nebraska had a rodeo. We were in that conference at that time, or that region at that time, and I think they won 11 of the 14 rodeos. The girls did. Women won 11 of the 14 championships that year when they were in rodeo. 2 breakaway ropers that were outstanding, and a barrel racer and stuff like that. And so it was fun.
One of the things that's always stood out to me about you is how consistent you were with covering everything. You're always at football games. You're always at basketball games. You're always at these things. And I really think it's one of those items people kind of take for granted, that all these great photos and these wonderful stories just kind of happen, but there's a lot of work behind that goes into that. And so I know there's a lot of time put into that.
Well, it was my thought that I should, if anybody did something well, outstanding, there should be a story about it back in their hometown paper, whether it be the smallest town in Nebraska, which you always get published in those, or a larger place. And I made lots of phone calls to the state desk at the University of Nebraska, Omaha World Herald and stuff like that, and tried to let people know what was going on. And there was a guy named Gene Barron there that I spoke to several times a month anyway, usually telling him some things, and he put a little tidbit in the paper and stuff like that. So,
well, and then also working alongside you for Danny Woodhead's senior season, obviously that was probably a pretty special time to be involved with sports information.
Oh yeah, and of course we had Don Beebe before that, and Davy Jones, and Kevin Homer, and a whole bunch of others too, like that. I tried to keep them in the limelight, but others did that too. But I was certainly glad to have you helping that year, because no one person could have covered Danny Woodhead like that, because we got people from New York Times and the ESPN and all over came to see him, and they wanted the whole time with him, and you showed him around most of the time, and went with them to find him, because otherwise we wouldn't have found him. And meanwhile, there's other things to write about and do about at Chadron State, and I tried to do some of that. But your timing was excellent to come.
Yeah, there certainly was some give and take there, and that was nice, because I mean, really, for about the first 5 months on the job, I felt like a personal chaperone to him because there was just such media exposure, and there's a lot going on. But every Tuesday morning, I still hope and pray that you're going to bring me by a donut, because he always used to bring donuts on Tuesday mornings, because we would schedule phone interviews with Danny Woodhead every Tuesday mornings. He'd call all these newspapers and agencies, so he'd always meet in our office. And
I don't remember
Con
that.
always brought us donuts.
That's a good tradition.
I don't remember that, but anyway, that's probably a good thing.
Con, let's talk about kind of the technical side of getting the news out. We have a question here about before fax, before email. What was the process for getting the news out to all these newspapers around the state or around the larger area? I think that our listeners would be interested to know kind of that view from the past and how that worked.
Well, I'm glad I thought about that a little bit, because you gave me this list of questions, and you made phone calls or you stuffed news releases in envelopes and rushed them down to the post office and got them there by 5 o'clock, and they'd stamp them and then throw them in the mail truck, and away they went. And in those days, the envelope mailed in Chadron on Monday evening would be on the desk of the Omaha World Herald by 9 o'clock or so in Omaha. So that worked pretty well. But
that's good.
I've had, in those days, I had a secretary and much more than that, an administrative assistant and I can't tell you how many. We were always stuffing envelopes at the end because these stories went to the weekly papers as well as to bigger papers because we sent them to Hemingford and Alliance and anywhere that somebody was from, a student that was from those places, if there was something going on, when we stashed them in there and then rushed them. And I broke the speed limit going down Main Street quite a few times, I think.
Oh, really?
To get down to the post office because at 5 o'clock But they usually knew I was coming. Sometimes they just threw them on the truck and they didn't even make it to the post office. I handed them to them and stuff. And I don't think we missed the deadline. Missed them very long. We might have missed the deadline, but they waited for us or something. But that was and of course, phone calls were very important in those days, particularly after the athletic events, and that was an interesting thing. Home and away. I always went on all the football. I didn't go to all the basketball games, but I always went on to all the football games, and would make a phone call from wherever it was and to usually the Scottsbluff Star Herald and the Omaha World Herald at least, and to let them know the outcome of the game and some stats that they could put together. And Rapid City Journal was very instrumental in it too at that time. Had a gal named Pam. I don't know what Pam's last name was. It was not Smith or Jones or anything like that, but she was so good. She could take all my notes in 15 minutes or 5 minutes maybe, and make a story out of it. And I called her lots of times the next day and told her what a good job she'd done of taking the notes and stuff like that. If we were away from home, why, it was sometimes I got left in Spearfish one time, and oftentimes had people waiting in the car when after I'd made some phone calls to these places, and that's how they got the news. And I worked on the other end when I worked at the Scottsbluff Star Herald and took those phone calls too from the various coaches, And if you could always tell, and I wasn't this way but if they didn't call, you knew they got beat.
Oh yeah.
And my wife, thank you for her, Peggy. Also took phone calls sometimes when maybe we had two things going on at once, and she was not always treated real respectfully by some of the coaches if they hadn't done well, and it frustrated her a lot. But anyway, she took phone calls, and then she'd let me have that. She'd take some notes and have that information, and then I'd make the call to whoever needed the information. Radio stations and newspapers. Mostly.
A lot of collaboration. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was.
And I can remember that in our old office in the basement of the Klein Center, that back room where we had all those storage items like the old programs and everything like that. There was a huge. You might remember it, Daniel. There was a huge wall of like a partitioned thing. It had all these envelopes in it that were pre-addressed.
Oh yeah.
and it was in alphabetical order, and so it just blew my mind that's how information used to be disseminated. It used to be a lot harder to do your job, quite frankly.
They were alphabetical order, and we'd get labels and paste on them and stuff like that. Yeah, that was. And I think that predated me. I think they had done that before I joined on, and I wasn't that creative to make that sort of a thing. But,
it was ingenious.
Were you the first person to have that focus as part of your job to covering the sports news and the campus news, or was there a dedicated person before you?
There were some people before me. Some were much better than I was and more talented. Particularly, my goodness, Warren Whittican would be a name that only people older than I would probably remember, but he was terrific.
Yeah.
And he got stuff in the Omaha World Herald. He would take pictures and send it down, and he did some things ahead of me. It made big news when I was in college here in, I guess it was in 59 when I was a freshman, that the Eagle Airs, which was the select vocal group, got to go to Cuba and the Caribbean anyway. I'm not sure. I guess Cuba was in it too, but yeah, because that was before we'd had any problems with Cuba.
Right.
So they did go down there, and but he got really a nifty story in the Omaha World Herald. He was very creative. He'd spent 25 years probably in the business before I knew him, because I was editor of the newspaper connected with the Eagle newspaper, and so I went to see him to get news also from him. So I knew,
Right.
But he was very good. He'd been done well before that. And if there was another person, I never knew this person, but his name was John Kelly, and he later became the head of the Nebraska State Department of Education, and he had done that. When I came along, and when I went to college here, and when I came here, Dick Tibbetts had done that. Poor Dick, they give him 25 different jobs. He sponsored the student senate. He did the food service. He was the college food service. He was the guy that ran the food service. I mean, he had people working for him and stuff, but he did that, and he sponsored groups and everything like that. And he kind of caught some dickens from people because he didn't quite get everything covered, but there was no way. He had 4 people's jobs, and they were difficult jobs. They were full-time jobs on their own, and it was sad that he didn't, because he was a nice guy, and he helped me immensely. He showed me how to look. I had never done any darkroom work at all until I came to Chadron State, and they kind of turned it over to me, but he showed me how to develop the film and print the pictures and things of that sort. And so he was, I've, for years and years, I sent him Christmas cards and birthday cards and stuff, thanking him for that. I've lost track of him in recent years. I know he lived in Casper the last I knew, but I appreciated so much what Dick tried to do to help me.
Yeah.
Con, you've been around a long time. You grew up in Chadron. Or actually south of town, but then went to high school here, you went to college here, and you've worked here for several years. How important is history to a college like CSC, and how do you see CSC's role in the western Nebraska region?
Well, I think history is extremely important, and I've emphasized that. I guess I've tried to keep track of things historically since then, and I think it's really important. And it's kind of interesting, I think. When I was working for the Chadron Record before I came to the college, there was people left over from the old Congregational Academy that was up on the hill. They were the people that in the 1890s and had gone to school there. My grandmother was one of them. And they would always invite. They had an annual carry-in dinner sometime in the summer, and I got to go to that because Grandma was there, and I knew of many of the other people there too. So, and they were interested in preserving history and talking about what had happened when they went to school there, But anyway, without history. History is everything. As far as I thought, it was very important to preserve history and to get involved in taking care of that when I came to work here. And I've slipped some in recent years on doing that, but I still tried to, keep lists of not only most rushing yards, but also of kind of some of the other things that. Achievements that people have had. And you'll notice in the back of the 100th anniversary book of the college, which I pretty well put together, there's lists of those kind of things. I kept track of tabs of the people that won awards and things, and I've still tried to do some of that too. Yeah,
and if I'm being honest, when I first started, I always thought those types of things were monotonous, the cataloging and the writing it, because you're not seeing 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road and how that's important, because you're just kind of living in the present and trying to get through it. And so I think CSC among its peers is very well positioned with its history and the knowledge base that has in large part been cultivated by you. And so I think you've done a really great job with that, not just institutional history, but athletic history as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have lists like that. And, we still get caught. Every once in a while, we'll think something was the first time that's ever happened at Chadron State. And then you look back in maybe way back when. I remember while we were doing this forensics things that seemed so good, why some people came from the 30s that went on to have outstanding careers, but they told about what they had done when they were riding from here to maybe, I think we went into Tennessee or something to some national conference. They got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the person that was their sponsor of their forensics group, his wife had cooked them a breakfast before they got there, and they could only drive like 40 miles an hour, and there was 5 or 6 people, probably 3 in each seat, going on those trips and stuff. But they had these stories about them, and some of those got in the 75th anniversary book that they told about the things that they had done and some of the accomplishments they had. So you just about don't ever want to say, boy, that's good English, isn't it? But anyway, you never want to say that this is the first time. And I learned that the other day just at a high school cross-country meet, because I didn't know about Eric Calkins, who's over at Chadron High School, the teacher now, winning the championship when he was in high school. He won the district championship, and a girl from Chadron High School then wins the one locally, and I said that she was the first because somebody told me she probably was the first, but she wasn't the first. He was. And Eric got a little correction thing in the Chadron record this last week about that.
Yeah, you got to get that in there.
Yes.
You talked a little bit about the history of the school and why that's important. You've been here a long time, though. What's the role of the college in the region? Has it changed, or has it been consistent?
Well, I don't think it's probably changed too much. Colleges are supposed to be leaders, I think, in their field, and I think we need, I think it needs to be a leader in economic development, and it needs to be a leader culturally, and new ideas, fresh new ideas should be distributed on the campus, and should be available on the campus, and new methods of doing things, interesting progressive ideas should come from a college, and that ebbs and flows kind of on our campus, I think, oftentimes because of what some faculty leader or something that develops something that gets going. I think back, and it's every field has had these over the time, and they still have them, leaders. I mean, Kim Madsen's child development conference that she's had for 30 years or so more, they get new speakers every year and bring them back and get new ideas pumped into the daycare centers and things of that sort. And that's kind of what I think a college should do, because they have access. Our faculty members just don't stay on campus. They go to a lot of conferences, and they hear people speak, and they say, hey, let's get this person to come back to Chadron State and tell us what he or she knows about something. And I think that's an important thing, because a lot of us, including myself, have spent most of their lives in Dawes County, people, or western Nebraska anyway, around here, and we don't hear and see those things quite as much. And of course, with the way things are now with Facebook and all the technology that's out there floating around, why people are way ahead of where we were in my era as a youth or something, or a college student. But this has gone on in lots of them. I mean, the math program that Gene Hughes created back in the late 50s and early 60s and stuff, that helped a lot of people develop into be computer whizzes, because he tried to help them as much as he could with that. And these people were really, really sharp mathematicians. They went on, got great jobs, and it just kind of snowballed. And we had a reunion of those people a few years back, and there were some people that were mighty proud of what they had accomplished, at that time. And so that's what I see as Chadron State's role, is to be kind of out in front of everything, and not everything we do is whiz bang and the top of the heap, but a lot of things here are, and we have a lot of good people that are willing to share those ideas and stuff. It happened in criminal justice under George Watson and before that too, and some people, every department just about has had, I think, sometime or another has had something happening like that.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, that is. So, Con, let's talk about photography. And you've spanned the film years and now the digital years, and here we are 2 decades or so into the digital revolution. But let's talk a little bit about what were things like when you had to develop film in the darkroom.
Well, I didn't know any better. There was no faster way to do it,
That's true.
So I saw the question. I thought about that. I'd come back from a football game and probably would maybe have 3 rolls of film, and I would soup them, which means you develop the film and let it soak in the water for 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, and then you hang it up and stuff. But before I made my phone calls, I would usually start that process and have the water, get
them washed up and drying out.
Washing up the film, and probably didn't print any pictures that night maybe, but early in the morning, 6 o'clock or so, I'd probably be up doing that. And, you'd look up, hold it up to the light to see which picture looked good and put a little snip in it, and then next day print it. And that's the only way there was to do it. You couldn't do it any faster,
Yeah.
Now, the football people, they would sometimes take pictures of the football game. Somebody had come up from Scotts Bluff to go to the football game, and they'd take it down to KSTF TV, and KSTF TV would develop that film. So then the next day, the coaches, and somehow it got back to Chadron, and so the coaches the next day could study the film a little bit, So it's just but it was all a hands-on. You've got to spend time doing this, and I had some really outstanding young people that helped me in the darkroom and could print pictures every bit as good as I could and stuff. But I'm just glad I don't have to do it that way anymore.
Yeah, it is. It's true. It's because you're looking at 20 minutes to a half hour to get your film developed, and then you've got to print it. And you got to
dry it.
Yeah, you got to dry it, and then you've got to get it, whether it was scanned and emailed or faxed before that. We have it easier now, it seems, because we can just download or we can send straight from the phone and get it onto social media and off to the newspapers. But
yeah, definitely. I don't remember that we had football pictures from Chadron State football game ever got in the Scottsbluff Star-Herald in the early days. We would have had, unless maybe we sent some film back with them. I can't remember.
Right.
But generally, nobody. To me, Chadron State needs to have a really strong information distribution program, because there's no big newspapers come to our campus and write stories or do much investigative reporting or do very much great photography and take pictures on our campus. It's just too far, I guess, for them to do that. They did it when Danny Woodhead was here, in some degree when Don Beebe was here, and when we had great athletic teams, they did that. But generally, we haven't had very many of those. But I remember the Rapid City Journal sent down Dick Rubeck. No, it isn't Rubeck. Shucks. Forgot his name, but he came down and took pictures of the games, and then they would have
Kettlewell, wasn't it?
Kettlewell, Dick Kettlewell would do that. And he'd come along and wear his kind of funny hat and be along the sidelines and lay down on the sideline and do that and stuff. Yeah. So that attracted attention, But we don't have, we've about never had a photographer from any other place come to our place to do it, except in the big game.
We've got to toot our own horn.
Yeah.
We've got to toot our own horn.
Yeah, we do, and we have to have, good coverage. And we've had some things that have happened on our campus that if it had been we'd had a big time daily newspaper or a big time daily newspaper would come and cover it, they probably would have got resolved a little bit sooner than it did, and it probably would have got more publicity. But
well, one of those big stories that you, I think, were involved with was male students' hair was long, and wasn't that a national news story? That
it was in John Chancellor was the NBC. I don't know if it was NBC or CB. I don't remember what. I remember, but he was here. Yeah, they.
And were you in like the information office, or were you a student?
I was, and they didn't pay attention to me, and I didn't. But they had their own agenda. They brought 3 or 4 people with John Chancellor, and he's smoking his pipe. I can still see him standing over out by the library, smoking his pipe and stuff, waiting for stuff to happen. But he was on national news that night.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the story is that the males had a dress code basically that back then at school they couldn't have long hair. Is that about it?
Yeah, or beards or mustaches, or maybe mustache down just to the bottom of her top of the mouth, but you couldn't have down here. Couldn't have a full beard.
Beard's not going to cut it, Daniel.
That's rough.
Couldn't have long hair, real long hair, and things like that. We think that's silly now, but then I see these young ladies wearing these overall or Levi's and jeans now that are all cut up, and to me, that's just as ever a bit as silly as what that rule was at that time. And when we went to college here, the girls had to be in the dorm by 9 o'clock at night or something like that, and stuff like that. So and this dates way back because I had people tell me about when they were students, you couldn't have the radio on over after 9 o'clock at night, in their rooms, and they'd hide in the closet and try to listen to some sleuth program or something at night, and they'd get in trouble about it. And, oh my goodness! Wow. So colleges but nobody says anything about the blue jean, the worn out blue jeans anymore. So I guess it must be better than the other stuff was. I don't know, but
Con, you kind of touched on it a little bit, talking about how CSC is largely responsible for its own media coverage, and some of that has to do with the fact where we're located. So you went you went to a lot of athletic games, a lot of time on the road. How many miles do you think you traveled with your job?
Alex, that's a $64 question. I have no idea. Don Watt would probably have a better idea.
Yeah, he would have been involved
because he was
with
the person that did the driving. In a lot of the games that I went to, I rode with him in the vehicle. I don't know, but it would have been thousands. But it's no more than they travel now, except it's they go by bus. They go further away than we did because we never played teams as far away very often as. Well, I guess we did play at Fort Lewis. They came over to our place one time. I know they lost a couple of players with knee injuries in that game. But we're isolated. We're out here. The closest game's ever always been South Dakota Mines, 100 miles, and then 140 miles to South Dakota or to Black Hill State, and then Kearney was next, and then it's a day's drive to Peru State and stuff, and so it's not. It's just the way we are out here.
Yep.
Any interesting memories of being on those road trips? You talk about being left behind in Spearfish. Well, any other stories?
Well, not very many. And praise the Lord, we've never had a bad accident that I was involved with. I mean, that is probably the biggest, most amazing thing that's happened here. Is I've never been involved in a bad wreck. We hit a deer. I was driving one time when we hit an antelope up by Lusk and some stuff like that, and we've done that, but we've never had a personal injury accident that I was involved in. But then rode lots of miles way after dark, and sometimes a bit over the speed limit too.
Oh,
but we had an interesting situation. It was the days when they had CB radios. Is that what you call them? The truckers had those.
Sure, yep.
And there was a guy, we were coming back, I think it was from Gunnison, but I'm not sure. One of the mountain towns in Colorado anyway. It might have been Mesa, it might have been Grand Junction. I think it was Grand Junction now. And this guy was weaving all over the road, dangerous to everybody. And there was no cell phones yet and everything. But we made signs, beware drunk driver ahead, and stuck them out the window for the people that were trying to pass us, because we were staying behind him instead of trying. And finally we got him up to where the road, there's fork in the road, and one of the athletic graduate assistants jumped out and grabbed his door and jumped in and took the car out of gear, and that's how we got him stopped.
Yeah.
And then a trucker comes along with a CD, and he can call the cops, and pretty soon we get cops coming there. So that was kind of,
that's different.
Nobody got hurt or anything in that, but this person was definitely in bad shape and needed some help for his own self and for everybody else on the road. So that was probably the most memorable. I remember we went to one of the Colorado colleges, and they broke into our van that night. Some students did, and some of them were football players, and they got kicked off. They didn't get to play in that game and stuff. The other school did a very good job of straightening things out and getting it going and stuff. So, but we never had a wreck, and we never. And always made it back home. I will be honest with you. One of the reasons I kind of quit was because I kind of got leery about all the driving that is involved, and it's never. But I'm so glad that we haven't had these accidents and things of that sort, and so that's.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you kind of look at road trips, I think, as these fun, willy-nilly, anything's going. But when you're, at least from my experience, when you're traveling with teams, it's very prescribed what you're doing, from lunch is 12:30 to 1:30, back on the bus by 1:45, or they're going to leave you in Spearfish or something like that. And so never really had a lot of fun, but the things that were nice was always interacting with the student athletes and getting to know the coaches a little bit better, and those were always the good things.
Yeah. I didn't do a lot of traveling, but I had one time where they needed a second driver to get the cheer team down to a football game. So I got roped into that, and I went down to take photos. And, you're driving back late at night, you're feeling kind of tired. You're thinking, no, I have to concentrate on this. I'm responsible for this group of students here. Yep. So you don't want to mess around.
Yeah, it's business.
Yeah.
I made use of those trips. It was a boon to me because I always had another story somewhere in the bag that I could write something about. And we'd get there like on Friday evening, and the game wouldn't be till Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And I'd spend the time I didn't need to go out and watch them stretch and play catch with the football and stuff, and I'd spend a lot of time writing stories in the evenings and stuff afterwards. I always slept well on the trips.
Yeah.
Even when I was driving. I didn't drive. They wouldn't let me drive, and that's a good thing. But
you always slept well in the cars, too.
I slept well in the cars, and I came back pretty well rested, and sometimes it was better. I'd gotten a lot more sleep than I would have if I'd have been at home doing things. So.
Yeah, true enough.
Con, what would you say are some of the long-standing traditions Chadron State College has?
That's a $64 question, too.
Well, I got two of them now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the Scholastic Contest has been a tradition that's been a good thing for Chadron State College and stuff. Homecoming and Family Day and things like that. I just can't think of a lot of other traditions that...
Well, Family Day was kind of something you helped start, wasn't it?
Yes, I did, because they were doing it at other schools, and I saw them do that. They'd honor their senior players, and I did do that. Yeah, it was something, and but now it goes on beyond that. Now they have the Family Tree Award, which I think is really nice.
Yeah.
And Karen Pope does a great job of doing that and making everybody feel special and that, and we've really had some neat stories from some of those people because they have their memories of what they did when they went to school.
Sure.
Some of them we don't think they were so special. They probably didn't think so special, but nobody does them anymore like this,
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's, I don't know. Otherwise, the Sandoz Center has become kind of a tradition and things like that. And like I said, Kim Madsen's Child Development Conference that she has every year, and there's others like that too that are traditions that people look forward to having those things. We had reading conferences here that Charlene Coates and my wife Peggy helped put on that really drew some great attention. We also, when George Watson was running the criminal justice program, we had a conference every year where they brought in FBI speakers and people who had uncovered some of the tragedy or bad things in law enforcement and things like that. So it was, and I guess that's kind of things that Chadron State College should do, is be a leader in some of those things to bring. But we'd have maybe a couple hundred law enforcement people on our campus some days that would come to those conferences because he'd get a special speaker that had solved some big crime event and stuff, and it was interesting.
Yeah. So, Con, you've written a few books now over the years. What's the next book going to be?
Well, I'd like to do one more.
Yeah.
And it's stories about it's a sports book. It would be the stories I wrote of people that had played football way before I was born. But they had good careers here and went on and had great careers in their professional lives and stuff. And I've got all those stories. It isn't something I have to look for.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll be getting it started. Dwayne Jimison will help me with that, like he did the one I just kind of put out here lately.
Yeah, I figured. Tell us a little bit about this most recent collection of stories you put together.
Well, it was just stories I had written after hearing speakers on our campus.
Right.
And some of them were college professors. So many of them were college professors. Others were people that lived here that had been in World War II. And I have there's three Holocaust victims in that. They weren't victims because they survived, but 3 Holocaust survivors in that. And I wrote stories about them, and I put those stories together. And this is what these would be too, is stories of people that sometimes I met up with them on the football trips I went. One of them was in Bozeman, Montana. There was a guy named Loki Christensen who had been supposedly had kicked a 75-yard field goal with the wind at his back, drop kicked it over here on Elliott Field. They don't know for sure it was 65 yards or 75 yards, but the wind. He said he was drop kicking it, and it could be a punt or it could be a field goal, and so it turned out to be a field goal. Chadron got 3 points off of it, but anyway, I got to meet him and his wife, and John Axtell was on that trip too, doing the broadcast, and we rented a car and went and saw him and his wife at their home. And there's pictures of things like that. And Peg and I sometimes took trips and visited some of these former athletes and stuff like that. And I've got probably 20 of those that I think they'll be kind of interesting. And people that I've wrote stories about and how they got. It's not about X's and O's, and we ran this sneaky play that nobody else had ever seen or anything like that. It's mostly how they survived while they were college students and with very little money. And one guy said he tackled the coach. The coach came out to scrimmage him a little bit, and he tackled him. And after that, he was a starter. So I hope to put that one together. And we may start on that before too long and stuff. we got to scan these stories. They're certainly not on my computer anymore. We'll have to scan them, and just like Dwayne did the other ones, and we'll go from there.
We've been doing a lot of cleaning up here in the basement of Kreitz. We had a flood this fall, and so I guess that was a good opportunity to do some organizing on your end. I know you have more photos on file than I thought possible.
And some of them aren't very good.
No, they're all good. We're making headway on that organization, though, it feels like.
Thanks to Rose.
Oh, she's doing a good job. And Amy.
Fankhauser, she's done a lot of work. I'm not good at that kind of thing. I think my organization isn't quite as skewed as it seems like sometimes, because I know I've got envelopes that's got pictures crammed into them, you know.
Right.
But boy, I want to give one word of advice. Always write on the back of the pictures who it is and what year the picture was taken and stuff, because we've got so many that are, it's a sad situation. But anyway.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
It'll be a long process, but little by little.
Keeps us busy.
And, you know, we do have all those scorebooks. There's one more step we could all take on. I could take on that, because we've got the scorebooks of every, particularly basketball scorebooks. We've got them, and it got numbers on them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The sport you really get in trouble with is like rodeo, where there's no numbers, and even
wrestling too. Wrestling's tough sometimes.
Wrestling is horrible. Yeah. And things like that. So, and track isn't very good either, and stuff. But if you want to take enough time, you could find some more of those names on some of those pictures. But
Con, you've had obviously a long and storied career at CSC, and with that, you've had a lot of offices. You've currently in Kreitz Hall. When I came to work with you, you were in the Klein Center. I think before that, you were in the administration building. Have you worked at other places, or of all those offices, which one was your favorite?
Well, I liked the Klein Center, I guess, probably as much as anything, because we were all there kind of together. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think the foundation was over there too, wasn't they? Weren't they?
Yeah,
and
they were.
And Jerry Ingram was kind of involved in that too. And was he one of your kind of mentors?
He was before me, but I've inherited a lot of his photo collection.
Okay. And
so his name is always kind of in the background there.
It was a good thing.
Yeah.
I liked that.
The print shop was there too.
Yeah,
it
was in those days, wasn't it? Yeah. So I started out and bless her heart, she's still living, Daisy Raymer, sharing an office with her that when I first came here, and I had a couple of offices where I just had a desk and a typewriter, and that was it.
Didn't need much more than that.
No, well, I didn't have very many files yet then, you know. Maybe we had a couple of filing cabinets, but anyway, that was in the administration building, and then they finally got a full room in the administration building. One of the old classrooms, the classroom when I was a freshman, it was a freshman English classroom down at the northeast corner of the building on the first floor. I had that whole office, and it got a dark room in there, and that was really handy, because you could, you know, be developing film while you were also answering the phone and things like that. So I didn't mind that at all. And stuff, and always had a telephone, I guess, so I could call people and stuff. So.
Yeah, it's been a lot. So, Con, I think anybody who knows you knows that you can pluck names and dates and stats out of your head for going back to just about any era that you need to. How do you remember all of that stuff? Is there a trick, or were you born with the ability?
Well, I've never lived in any place other than western Nebraska, and never any place much other than Dawes County. So that makes that easy, I guess, and stuff. I don't know. And it's kind of strange. We had a football reunion here a while back, and people from the 90s, I guess, some of them were 70s, weren't they? 70s were here. And I remembered quite a lot of those people. But listen, if I had to go out and identify the football players that we have now, if they didn't have their numbers on, I would, I know some of them because of their shapes and sizes and positions and stuff.
Right.
And maybe their dad played here, like as in case of Jared Machichok. And so he looks like anyway. But I don't remember names and incidents and faces and stuff as well now as I probably did then. That was something new to me, and it was kind of like being in kindergarten. You can remember those things because you know what was taking place, and that.
Sure, I understand.
But I have a hard time remembering names of 20 years ago and stuff like that. But I do have. Ross Armstrong gave me the college's letterman's book. And I can go back and find people that, whether they lettered at Chadron State College, and find them we've tried to keep that book up so I can do that. And there's some funny stories about some of that. Somebody will call up sometime and want to know what year so-and-so played at Chadron State, and I can't find that so-and-so ever played at Chadron State.
Oh, yeah.
His name's not in the letterman's book. And that isn't just football, it's all sports.
Right.
Well, Con, we've reached the portion of the interview where we kind of do quick hitting questions. So we have 5 questions, and so just the first thing that comes to the top of your head, and the first one is your favorite baseball team.
Well, it's got to be the Washington Nationals after last night. But,
I know that's not true.
Well, the worst team in baseball was my favorite team for a long time. That's the Detroit Tigers, But anyway, that's not very important to very many people.
But you told me once that you were able to get the old radio broadcasts of the Tigers games when you were a kid.
Mostly St. Louis Cardinals games.
Oh, okay.
Harry Carey and Jack Buck and those games. You could KMOX. You could hear those games. And sometimes too staticky, too much. Lightning and thunder in the summertime.
Yeah.
We had a radio that
those AM waves they can travel
they
miles.
Sure can.
Pick up. My goodness, everybody in my age group listened to KOMA in Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City, and on the radio, and when going to high school, playing the rock and roll songs and stuff like that.
Neat.
Johnny B. Good and anyway.
Oh yeah. So writing a story, typewriter or computer? What's your preference?
Well, I had a lot less problems with typewriters than I ever have with computers, but computers are such a wonderful development. I can store stories on the computer from 30 years ago. Well, not 30 maybe, but 20 years ago, and can find them and stuff like that. And if I do it right, and you can rewrite you can take the story and rewrite it and kind of plagiarize it from the last time you wrote it and make it a little better, and do that with letters a lot anyway. But typewriters were terrific too, and they had to come to my office and take away my typewriter and replace it with a computer before I really embraced the computer very long. And man, did I have trouble with computers for a long time.
So
I still have trouble with
arranged
computers,
marriage.
and people like Dwayne and Alex, and particularly now, Eric Wellnuts.
Yeah.
He can fix my computer from his desk better than I could ever fix it from my own desk. And
Yeah, I guess the troubleshooting has gotten easier.
and so it's computers are a wonderful development, and let people produce a lot more than they ever did before, and things of that sort.
Sure.
I wrote a lot of stories by hand at one time
yeah.
too, and then retype them and stuff, write them maybe on the road and stuff.
Yeah, I was
like
going to say, was that on the car trips and get their first draft out that way?
Yeah, and then but anyway.
Con, if Chadron State College wasn't the name of the college, what would it be?
Well, I think it's already been but I think Western Nebraska College would have been a good, or Nebraska Western College, which Scottsbluff took over. They used to be Scottsbluff Junior College, and I think that would have been a real good, okay name, I think.
They were like Hiram Scott College too for a while.
No, Hiram Scott was a separate college, completely a separate college. It was a private college that was started by some people that didn't want their sons to go to Vietnam and stuff like that. And
Oh, I see.
So if you were in college, you didn't have to go to serve in the army, or serve in the military, and so but they were mostly kids from the east that came to Scottsbluff, but it was Scottsbluff Junior College, and then I think they became Nebraska Western College, and then Western Nebraska Community College, but anyway, that would have probably been about as best. But you notice that Wayne State and Peru State and University of Nebraska at Kearney and stuff are still all names that they go with the town.
Yep.
Dickinson State and Minot State and quite a few of them. Some schools try to camouflage them and make them universities and stuff. But there's a lot of. You go through the Missouris and go through the Kansas and stuff, and there's a lot of towns that are schools that are named after the town where they were founded.
Con, how many times have you been up to the top of Sea Hill?
Well, not for quite a while.
No.
Not a lot. I mean, I used to take my kids up there and go skiing, or not skiing, sleigh riding and stuff. I try to go up there about every spring for a long time, and I love yucca plants.
Yeah.
And I'd take pictures of them and with the trees in the background and get a V and where the picture of the where I could take the campus picture.
Yeah.
And we always got the Armstrong Building and
did.
The library and as much of the campus as you could. You couldn't get it all hardly because it's such a
it does go just wide enough.
West to East college, and so you couldn't get it all. But that was probably good for me to hike up there and stuff like that. I've been up there and took pictures of them painting the sea and stuff like that and stuff. It's it's one of the landmark things that we have on our campus, I think. And I think when the college was 100 years old, I put together 10 things that I thought were unique about Chadron State, and
that's on there.
Yeah. Con, last question. What is a word that comes to the top of your head when you think of Chadron State?
Well, I almost get tears in my eyes when I think about this and I thought about this but it's been good to me, the college. I don't know what else I'd have done if I hadn't gone to work here, and I hope I've given the college my money's worth, and I hope. I know I've made some mistakes and things and stuff, but it's been good to me, and it's because I've enjoyed what I've done. I have some pride in what I've done, and I also have some regrets and some things that I know should have been done better and could have been done better by a more capable person. And my capabilities are not intelligence and things like that. It's mostly just that I was willing to put it. As one guy said one time, if I only worked 40 hours a week, I'd have thought I was on vacation, and that's the way it was here. I mean, 40 hours didn't mean anything to me, and it still doesn't really too much.
Yeah.
And but I sure like a napping during the noon hour. So, but anyway.
Well.
Anyway, it's been good. Chadron State College has been good to me, and I hope that I've been somewhat good to it too.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that when a lot of people think of the college, they think of you, they think of the words that you've written, they think of the images that you've taken, and so the college is definitely a lot better off since you came around. So thanks for joining us, Con.
Thank you.
It's really been a lot of fun kind of walking down memory lane with you, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Well, thank you very much.